Yes, well, welcome back, divas. No dudes today, a couple of dudes, and welcome back, everybody at home. Yes, my good news is that I have just accepted an offer with the American Heart Association. So I will be, yes, starting mid January, I'll be helping to manage some of their clinical partners and helping to oversee a health equity coalition, which I'm really excited about. But I will continue doing classes for you all, so stay tuned. I believe I'm back in February for Heart Health Month, which is very nice. So stay tuned. We'll be doing some more classes in the coming year. Jose made sure she got her plug in and made sure that I was on board, and I was like, absolutely, let's do it. So I'm excited about that. Very good way to start the new year, right? Yes, exactly. So, welcome back, everybody. I know it's a little gloomy again today, but we've got a delicious recipe. Thanks for bearing with me as I was out recovering from just some nasty allergies, I think, that just kind of took me by surprise. But we've got a delicious recipe. I hope you all had a nice holiday. This is a great recipe to make for the holidays, but you can make it any time of year because cabbage is plentiful. You can get it any time of the year, it's not a seasonal thing. And it's one of my, people often ask me, like, what's your favorite thing to cook? What's your specialty, right? And I often say, I like to take food that people don't often know what to do with, or it's kind of like the underdog of ingredients, right? And cabbage is one of those. I don't know if many people say first thing like, oh yeah, I love cabbage, right? But I tend to find things that, are inexpensive and then just do something real simple, but that just boosts some flavor and make them a little bit unique and interesting. So that's what we're going to do today. So we have this roasted cabbage steak with lemon tahini sauce, and this is sort of the wrap up of our healthy holiday recipes. I know Christmas and Thanksgiving have passed, but maybe some other holidays that you all have planned for the new year, this could be on the table. What I also like about this is you can make it ahead of time and you can have it either hot or cold. I have prepared it this morning, so it's nice and warm for you guys to sample out when we get to that point. But I'm going to walk you through it, and through the magic of television, as they say, we already have some prepared for you. So you can try that. But it's just basically two components. So it's taking some cabbage, and then we're going to do like a little marinade for it. And then we're going to make the sauce that goes with it. And so I'll kind of walk you through it like we normally do, and then we'll talk about some of the ingredients. But let's start with the cabbage. So it's just a regular green cabbage, and I like to try to get the biggest one that I can find. And sometimes you'll have like these outer leaves that are kind of loose. You can take those off if they're blemished, but this one looks pretty good, so I'm going to just keep them on. When it gets to this part here, the end part, I like to slice it just a little bit to take off this little part that's brown. And then what I'm going to do is I have a sheet pan here that's lined with foil. You may have to, depending on how big your cabbage is, you may have to have that spread across two pans. I have some pretty big pans at home, so I just use one. But you want to start on the end, and we're just going to cut across. And the thing to remember is, has anybody done things like cauliflower steaks before or seen those? Yeah, so you want to make sure that you try to get the slices as uniform as possible, because if you don't, then it's just going to take a little bit longer for the thicker ones to roast in the oven, right, and to cook, and then the smaller pieces will cook up much faster. So I kind of just start on the end here, and so you'll get this nice end piece. It's so pretty, isn't it? And then just kind of keep cutting down so that you get these nice steaks. A big sharp knife is handy. I'm just going to grab my sheet pan here. And it's okay if some of these pieces come off here. That's still just as delicious. And we're just going to do this. You could do this with red cabbage. I haven't tried it with red, but I'm sure it would be just as delicious. When you get to the end, just be careful. Sometimes I will just kind of do a side cut like this, just so that I don't have it wiggling around, right? We don't want to cut ourselves in the kitchen. But that's an easy way to do that. And you've got your piece there. And so it'll yield, maybe about 3 to 5 pieces. And then you've got that ready. Okay, so I'm going to just set that aside so you all can see how I prepare the rest of this. So far, so good, right? Okay, and then the next thing that we're going to do is prepare just what we're going to top it with. And very simply, we're going to use about an onion and a half. So these are sweet yellow onions. You could use any kind of onion though, but my favorites are the yellow. And I'm going to just do this way so that it's much easier for me to peel off this skin here. And you know how you have that kind of slippery piece? I take that off too. We don't want to have our knife slip on that. So, and then as I've mentioned before, you guys know me, I save the scraps and then I use that to make, stocks and things like that. And then I just take a little bit of the root off. I still want to keep it intact for when I'm dicing this. And that's what we're going to do. We're just going to do a small little dice on that. And so it's 1.5 really nice large size onion here I'm going to use today. So lots of great, we'll talk in a little bit, all the health properties of all of our ingredients today. Some interesting facts about some of the ingredients we have today, especially when we come to the sauce that I'll show you how to make. It's based on a tahini, so it's sesame paste. Has anybody cooked with tahini before? A couple of you? Okay, great. All right. So the way that I like to cut an onion is I've got this flat surface, right? There's a couple easy ways. You could just easily make some knife cuts one way here and then go across. The way that I was taught was to take my knife here on the side and just go in. Now you have to make sure you have a nice sharp knife, and I always keep my hand up on the top safely away, right? My fingers are away from my blade. So I've made cuts along this way, and then I just turn it and make some cuts, kind of following the little ridges on the onion. It's sort of like a natural marker on the onion, right? And that's how I make my dice. And you can make it as large or as fine as you'd like. And then there we go, voila. So quick, easy way to chop an onion so you don't cry. When I get to the end, I just place it down and continue to cut. I've got a nice big chunk over here. It's never perfect, but I'm always going for safety, right? We don't want to chop our fingers off. We'll make sure we end up with all 10 fingers when we leave. And then you can run your knife through a little bit more, but we're going to do that again so you guys can see that. And I make maybe 2, depending on how large the onion is, maybe 2, 3 slices one way. I turn it. I make it look easy, right? Practice, many years of practice. And a very sharp knife is helpful. And voila. It's just a nice sound too, right? And so it gets a little slippery. It's tricky to do with the gloves because the gloves are slippery too. So I always just turn it on the side just for safety. Chop that a little bit. Okay, so that is one onion, and then we'll do the half of this other one here. And I'm going to add that to this little bowl that I have to my left. Just cut that a little bit more. Now, what you could also do with this, if you were just like, I'm not great at chopping, I don't want to waste the time on that. If you had a little food processor, you could easily put that in your mini chopper. And even if you do it, or you could grate the onion, if you have like, a little grater, that would be great too, because you're just releasing more of the onion juices and the flavor. So and it's all going to get roasted. So that's okay with this recipe. I tend to like the little the chunks. So that's why I dice it. But it's up to you all. I always say, my recipes are a starting place, right? So start there and then see what you enjoy. When I'm making things like meatloaf or hamburgers, I tend to grate my onion into the meat. I think it just kind of adds a little more flavor, and then you don't get the big chunks. So it kind of blends in with the meat. Okay, one more, in case you missed it the first 2 times. There we go. All right. Anybody have favorites when it comes to onions?
I like the sweet.
The sweets, yeah. They are my favorites. Red are also my favorites in special things. Yeah. Depends on what I'm making. Yeah, exactly. They just have a great taste. When I'm caramelizing onions for anything, yellow onions are my go-to. They're just they're just much sweeter, right? I read somewhere that there's it's like the Texas, I forget what number it is. There's like a number, and it was developed here in Texas at one of the universities. Yeah, okay, yeah, and it's the sweet yellow onions. They're so good. Okay, I'll do that. 10/15s, is that what it is? Okay, yeah.
I knew it was
10 something, yeah, me too. I couldn't remember the number. Okay, so we got our onions in there. I'm gonna set this aside here. This here. I always like to work clean, and I don't want my knife to slip on any slippery cutting boards. Okay, so with onions, onions' best friend is what, do you think? Always a nice pair, right? So we're gonna add in some garlic as well. Garlic is definitely good for our immunity. We were just having a funny conversation about garlic. When you peel it, it's supposed to help strengthen your nails, like if you get the garlic on your nails. I don't like the smell of garlic on my fingers, so I will go and rub my fingers on the inside of my stainless sink, and then that takes off the stink, takes off the smell. But there used to be some, you might still be able to find it. It looks like a bar of soap, but it's a stainless, and you can use that instead. But I'm like, you can just use your sink too. Okay, so we're gonna use 5 cloves. These are really big of garlic, and we're just gonna mince that up. I'm gonna take half of this one because it's kind of like a 2-in-1 here. But a lot of garlic is delicious, good for your health, right? My father used to just eat it raw. Yeah, it's intense. I prefer to roast mine. There's something you could do too. It's called a confit of garlic, where you just basically take a bunch of peeled garlic cloves, put it in a little pot, and then cover it with olive oil typically, and then just simmer it really low until those garlic cloves get nice and soft. And you could use the oil then as garlic oil to use in cooking, or you could also use those cloves and just spread them on your bagel. You could use them in salad dressings, but it's just anything confit means it's been cooked in an oil, kind of low, slow heat with oil. And it just softens and mellows things. And garlic, as you know, is great, but it has that sharp bite to it. So to mellow it out, typically we're roasting things in the oven, right, with garlic. That's also a great thing to do, but you can also do it on the stovetop with something like a confit method. So that's always nice. Plus,
You know how you can buy the garlic in the jar?
mhm.
Fresh is probably better.
You could try the garlic in the jar because it's basically minced. I know sometimes they'll add like something just to preserve it, but you could give that a try. Yeah. I like the whole cloves though, because sometimes I'll just like eat those once because they get kind of a nice little caramelized. We used to do that in the restaurant I worked at, and we would whip up the garlic cloves because it would come to this nice, almost like super brown. It almost looked like peanut butter color because it was so like roasted. And then we would add that to mashed potatoes. That was the secret. So we would add it to mashed potatoes. Yeah, so we'd make a whole bunch of that and just keep it in the fridge and just add it by the spoonful as we were preparing our mashed potatoes. You guys are learning all sorts of tricks today.
It gets sweet when you roast it.
Yeah, yeah. So if you're not a fan of just really raw, harsh garlic, I recommend roasting it. But garlic is so good for us, especially this time of year when everybody's getting sick, right? Helps boost the immunity. It's good for all that. So yeah, so I just kind of do a nice little mince of our garlic cloves here. That looks pretty good. And we'll add that to our bowl. And then we are going to also add our spices. And so I have some fun spices today. We've used turmeric in some of our past recipes. Great anti-inflammatory spice, right? So we're going to have 1.5 tablespoons of turmeric. And pop quiz for you all who've taken my classes before. What's the other spice that we need to use to bring out the most, like the absorbency of turmeric? Ah, okay, fantastic. So we're going to use some black pepper as well. So let's say 1.5, that's about 1.5. And I just love the color, so that's one thing. This is sort of what's gonna really make the cabbage stand out. It's the turmeric is helping with the color. So right now we have this beautiful, just kind of green and white color, right? But once we add all the spices, it sits in the oven and it roasts. It just brings out this bright sort of yellowy color that's so beautiful. And people, they're like, I didn't think I loved cabbage that much. And once they try this, they're like, this is so good. So trust me, when you all make this and you bring this out to your friends and family, they're going to be like, this is the best thing ever. Can you make it again? What's the recipe? Okay, and then the other spice that we have not talked about yet is this Ras al Hanout spice. It's a Middle Eastern spice. You can find it at H-E-B. I'll pass this around here in a second. We're going to use 2 tablespoons of that. But Ras al Hanout stands for head of the shop. So it's kind of a Moroccan Tunisian spice blend. And it means like kind of the best of everything, right? So it has things like cumin, coriander, clove. It has sweet and hot paprika sometimes in it, ginger. It has all these wonderful spices in it. I want you guys to smell this because it's amazing. Chili powder, I believe, is in there. I don't remember the first time I tried this or how I even learned about this spice. I'm always curious about spices. And so I thought, I have some of this. Let me give this a try on some of these roasted veggies I have. And it worked really well in this recipe. So you all get to try it today. But I will pass that around so you can take a look. And this is the little container I got at H-E-B. You can probably find it at most stores these days. The other thing we're going to add is the salt and pepper. So it's a teaspoon of salt and then just half a teaspoon of black pepper. And then the last thing we're going to add to that is our olive oil. So a nice healthy fat to bring it all together. And I'm going to just give that a quick mix here. And so again, like I said, you could do this in a food processor if you didn't want to take the time to do this. You could even do this in advance and then put it on your steaks. Like maybe you have this prepared in the morning and you have your steaks, if you have room in your refrigerator to put this all on your steaks, put this in the refrigerator, and when you come home in the evening after work, just pop it in. It'll already have time to sit and marinate. This could be used for any kind of vegetable, honestly, or even meats, right? It's just kind of a nice basic blend of onion. Onion and garlic is just good on anything, right? So I'm going to give that a good mix. Yeah, oh, it's the best, right? Okay, so what I'm going to do is just spoon a little bit of this on. We're going to preheat our oven to 400 degrees. And so when you're roasting things, what you want to pay attention to is high heat, because that's going to help caramelize whatever it is you're roasting, bring out those nice flavors. But what I tend to do with this, because I kind of tried to, do the thickness about the same, but you've got these little end pieces that are going to start to caramelize sooner. And you know me, I like to kind of get in here, but I typically tend to rub this in. You could make it a little more, like if you wanted it more oily, you could add a little more olive oil to it, but this is a pretty good paste. It's going to seep into this cabbage. And yeah, you could do this and keep it in your fridge, and then when you come home, it'll have, really concentrated into all the layers of the cabbage. But then I'm going to flip it over and do the other side as well, because we've got enough to do that, and we want flavor from everywhere, right? So yeah, if you have a slightly larger baking sheet, that's helpful. Or go ahead and spread it across 2 baking sheets if you need to. But see how simple this is, and you really can use this kind of on everything. And then as it's roasting, what I'll do is, partway through, I will flip just so that both sides get roasted. And if you like, sometimes I'll do it at a slightly higher heat just to get kind of more of that caramelization. But just be careful because, again, depending on the size and the thickness of your cabbage, you just kind of have to watch how quickly things are roasting. Okay, so it'll look something like that. And you can let that cool or let that stay in the oven, turn it off once you finished baking it. I think I said in here maybe about 55 minutes, just so that you flip it halfway through, make sure both sides are completely cooked through. You want it nice and tender. Some of maybe on the ends will get a little more caramelized, or you can cook it a little bit longer. The thing about cabbage is it's a really nice, it's part of the brassica family. So anything like cauliflower, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, kale, they're just hardier. And so they kind of can take, they can withstand the high heat. They get tender, but they're not going to get super mushy or fall apart, right? Like it'll stay nice and tender. So I'm going to set that aside and clean up a little bit here so you can see what I'm going to move on to next. Yeah. No, because you've got the foil. Most of it'll stay, and then what I like is, since it's baked on foil, when you scoop everything out once it's done, there's a little bit of the bits on the bottom that are still nice and caramelized. I just kind of scoop that up and put it on top. Yeah.
Okay, here's a question. Which side is not the sticky side of the foil?
The shiny side.
Oh, the shiny side.
I always put the shiny side up because it attracts the heat, right? And so that too will also help with your caramelization. Yes, great questions. Okay. So that looks pretty easy, right? I mean, you all could do that. Nothing too difficult there. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to make our sauce. And our sauce, the base for it is the sesame paste, which is this tahini. You can get different brands at H-E-B. It depends on the store. I've found like 3 different brands. This one's pretty good. I like to experiment and try all different ones. But basically, if you haven't used the sesame paste before, it's also kind of like, you tend to find it in Middle Eastern foods. If anybody has eaten hummus, chances are you've had tahini because it's in it. But it's basically ground sesame paste. And so it kind of is like peanut butter, where when you see it, it's got this thick consistency, but there's some oil at the top. And so you got to mix it, right? It will look a little like this. This actually reminds me of that sunflower butter. So it looks like that. Yeah. So great question. So you can usually find this just actually next to the peanut butters. You'll see it there, or if there's like sort of the international food section, you'll see it there sometimes. To store it, usually you like peanut butter, dry, cabinet, dark, right? Because it has oil, you don't want it to go rancid. I tend to keep mine in the fridge, but I use it pretty regularly. And so I just have to remember to stir it up because it will thicken if you keep it in the fridge because of the oil. But I use it pretty quickly. One little trick I'll show you. I don't know if anybody does this. I'm big on mason jars because I just have a million. Last time I showed you how to preserve berries in the mason jars. Did anybody try that?
Yeah.
Oh, you did? Okay, cool. Yeah, it really works. I had some strawberries that I kind of forgot about, and they were like 2 weeks old, and they still looked great in the mason jar. Okay, so we're going to start with half a cup. Sorry, I'm going to use this little spatula. Half a cup of the tahini, and this has already been kind of stirred, but I'm going to use the mason jar because, then you can just store it in there. So I'm all about less dishes to wash, even though I have a dishwasher at home. But anytime I can kind of cut some corners on dishes, I do. So we're going to do that, half a cup of that. And then the other thing we're going to add to this is some fresh lemon. So great, again, boosting our immunity, right, this time of year. Some vitamin C. Just 1.5 lemons. We're going to add to that for a little bit of tanginess in here. Oh, watch out, camera. Good thing it's that far away. One of my favorite lemons, and you can probably find them this time of year, is Meyer lemons. Has anybody seen those or used those?
Those are in that container, right?
Sometimes, yeah, they're kind of special lemons, so they'll put them in like special bags or a little container. But they are, they're almost like a sweeter, more florally lemon if you can find them. And you could use that, something like that in this recipe. But I tend to, if I find them, use them maybe for like a baked good, something special, because you don't see them that often. But they are really nice lemons. Anybody have any lemon trees here? I know this is.
I
We
have
do.
gotten
Oh, nothing yet. What's the secret? What's the secret to making them produce? Does it just take a while?
You know, I've had mine for about 5 years, and the only thing that's ever produced in the last 2 years are my hairs.
Oh.
And everything was measured out. Anyway, I'm still waiting.
Darn it.
But then I've seen like people that have like bushes too, though. And so I don't know, you know, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, maybe. Okay.
Oh, is that
I-
what it is? 'Cause it looks like a bush to me. Oh, okay.
I had a pink lemon tree from HEB one year, and I couldn't get it. Yeah, it smelled amazing. I couldn't get it to grow, and I gave it to a friend, and she had a good green thumb, and she got it to produce. I didn't get to try them, but it was a pink lemon. Yeah, I'd never seen that. Okay, so the next thing we're going to add is a little bit of sesame oil, so just a teaspoon. If you like more of that sesame flavor, you could add more. But I like always layering sort of similar ingredients. So we have the sesame paste, and now we have a little bit of the sesame oil going in there. And then we're going to add some more garlic because we love garlic. So just 1 clove, just in case we didn't have enough, we're going to add some more. And these are nice big cloves of garlic. If you find the garlic at HEB, this was just kind of the white papery kind of garlic. But if you see the kind that has the purple and pink stripes, that is some really nice garlic. HEB sometimes has a nice deal of like 3 for $1 on those. But that's something about that. When I see those, I'll buy a bunch and then I'll just roast it to have it on hand. 'Cause that is some good stuff. It's also, I find it's a lot like the skin, the papery skin on those is a lot easier to peel. And peeling garlic is like my least favorite thing to do. So I try to look for that garlic if I can find it. Sometimes you'll see it in the, you know how HEB has the Mi Tienda brand? You'll see them kind of packaged in the little bags that say Mi Tienda. But yeah, usually they just carry their own. Okay, so in goes 1 clove of garlic. And then we're going to add a little bit of salt and pepper as well. So half a teaspoon of salt and then just a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. And then what I'm going to do is just take my whisk and give this a nice stir. So it'll take a little while for it to come together, but it'll start to change color. So it was kind of that dark brown color. Then it almost looks like peanut butter. And you'll get to a point where it's almost too hard to whisk, right? It's almost like spackle. And now you've got something that's like this, and you're like, I screwed it up, Raquel. Where did I go wrong? What happened? But let me show you the magic that will happen here. So we're going to do a little bit of water just to loosen it into the sauce. That is the secret. Yeah. So I do 6 tablespoons of just, tap water. I've got bottled water here. That's 2, that's 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so watch what happens next. Try to be careful here. I have my handy little whisk that you guys know I love. Great kitchen equipment. So it gets kind of muddy and you're like, oh no, it's not looking right. I don't know what Raquel did, but mine does not look like that. It's like, have faith, keep stirring. That's the secret. There is a mixer for peanut butter. Yeah. So see, now it's coming together. So it's funny that it goes sort of from the state of oiliness to this like total spackle. And then if you just add a little bit of water, or you could add more lemon juice if you like it more tangier. But then you get this beautiful, luscious, nice, creamy, yeah. And you could keep adding water. I like it a little bit thicker, but if you want it a little runnier, just keep adding water until it gets to the right consistency. And then, so this is just the sauce that we'll drizzle on top. But I tell you, this sauce goes great on anything. You can use it on any kind of roasted vegetables. I tend to use it also as a salad dressing. Trader Joe's has kind of like a Caesar dressing that reminds me of this. And so I'll make this and add, like a little more sesame oil, sometimes a little honey to it. But this is kind of my favorite because it's good on everything. You could even use it on grilled meats too, if you wanted to. So there we have our sauce. And then the last thing is just a little bit of Italian parsley, just for some garnish. Oh, my bad, Italian parsley and sunflower seeds is what we're gonna garnish it with. There are a lot of restaurants that do like cauliflower steaks, and they'll do something like this with the sauce. They might use like some golden raisins as well, just for a little sweet. The thing about this is, we've been talking about holiday recipes and just doing something a little different. I know typically holiday recipes tend to be the ones that we pull out at the time of year when, it's the special ones, right? And I often say, if you enjoy it that much, try to bring it out, often throughout the year instead of just waiting, because some of those recipes are so good and they can have really, beneficial ingredients in them. Turkey is great for us. It's a great source of protein. Why don't we make it all times of year, right? So this one though, I do tend to make it quite a bit. I tend to like it in the winter, I think, just because of once you start smelling all the spices, roasting in the oven, there's just something really tasty about that. So I tend to make this more in the winter. One of the other things that I will do as well is when I make a bunch of this, if I make kind of like a salad or a salad bowl with grains and maybe I'll put some meat, I'll add a bunch of this on the side. It's kind of like extra filler for me because it's great fiber, right? But it's also got great colors and flavor. Okay, so that's just a little bit of our parsley chopped up. And then I'll show you how I put it all together. I'm gonna take this fancy little plate here. I've got some of our cooked cabbage. And so here's how it looks. It's got this beautiful color. It's nice and golden. If you all have had like golden chives, one of the key ingredients in the spices is the turmeric, and that's what gives it this lovely color. But see how it just nicely caramelizes? And some of it'll kind of fall apart because it's those outer rings of the cabbage that we sliced, right? But it's still delicious. And then we'll add our sauce, which I have a little bit here. And mine, I added a little bit more water too, so I'm gonna just stir that up a bit. And I like to just kind of drizzle it from high up here. Do a little bit of that. It is, right? That's part of it. Okay. And then we've got our sunflower seeds. Easy way to get, a lot of good nutritional benefits is just to add some seeds and nuts to your dishes. And this is just like great flavor. So you've got kind of the tender cabbage, you've got the creaminess of the sauce, you've got the crunchy of the sunflower seeds, and then you got a little bit of color, right? And so voila, here is what we have is our roasted cabbage and our lemon tahini sauce. Yeah, and it smells wonderful. So Jose is putting together some samples and we'll pass them around in a little bit. But what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about our ingredients. So let me do that and leave my mess here for the end. So cabbage, I said, it's one of those ingredients. It's not like a super sexy ingredient to cook with. People aren't automatically reaching for cabbage and saying, let's get some of this on the table, right? But would you guys make this? I mean, this is a pretty good one, right? It's a great source of fiber, which we need. Women especially need a lot of fiber. Kind of keeps things regular, right? We need to kind of keep things flowing in our body. So finding these foods that are low calorie, lots of healthy lots of healthy nutrients in them. Cabbage is the number one. It's so easy to find, and you never have a tough time finding it at the grocery store, and it's usually relatively inexpensive. It's also great. It's a great source of antioxidants. So again, with if you deal with inflammation in the body, that's one thing probably all of us suffer from at one time or another, right? Cabbage is it's a prebiotic. So it helps reduce inflammation. And so prebiotics are those foods or ingredients that support the healthy bacteria that's already in our gut. And so we want to incorporate those. Sometimes we reach for the supplement, but you can get it from our foods, and cabbage is a great source of prebiotic. Cabbage and some other green vegetables like broccoli are a great source of vitamin C. And so often people think, citrus or whatever, right, for vitamin C, but think about your vegetables as well. And cabbage is a great source of that. It is also a great source of potassium. And so if you have issues with your blood pressure, it's great to help regulate your blood pressure to eat cabbage. And then lastly, vitamin K. So making sure we avoid things like osteoporosis as we get older. It has a great source of vitamin K, so good for that as well. Tahini, when we get back to our sesame paste, so it is a Middle Eastern condiment. It's made from ground sesame seeds. It is also a great source of fiber. It is also a prebiotic, and it is a great source of protein and iron. And so, if you all remember with iron, what's another vitamin that we just said that's helpful to get the most maximum absorbency of iron? It's vitamin C. And so you've got you can see how we built this recipe. You've got all of those things together. You don't really have to think about it, but you're hopefully increasing the amount of absorption of some of those valuable nutrients in this recipe. It's also a great source of healthy fat, which we love, as is the olive oil, right, that we use today. Hummus is one of the things that you've probably tried this in. Has anybody tried a dish called baba ganoush? It's made with eggplant. That you'll find sometimes they'll use this in there. In the United States, probably around the 1940s is when this ingredient started showing up in health food stores, because they probably said, wow, this is really delicious and it's got some good health properties to it. Let's start, getting that out. And so now you'll see this typically at most grocery stores. You can find it pretty easily, but it kind of started getting introduced into the US mainstream through health food stores in the 1940s. So it's been around for a while. Ethiopia, I was kind of interested by this, produces the best tahini because of the sesame seeds that are used. So it has just more rich complexity because the seeds are a little bit lighter. Sometimes the seeds can be toasted and then turned into the paste. It is a vegan product. It is gluten-free and nut-free, which is nice, right? So some people have the nut allergies and they want to make something, but I've seen tahini used in sweet recipes, so cookies and baked goods you can use it in. So that's kind of a nice alternative substitute ingredient. And then, as we mentioned, make sure that you're storing it in a cool, dry place or in the refrigerator, because it will go rancid. It does, if you were to just taste it like that without anything added to it, it has kind of like a nutty flavor, but it has a slightly bitter taste, and that is natural. If it's super bitter, though, it's probably gone rancid and it'll probably have an off smell. So make sure if you buy that. And it typically comes in a container. My only gripe about it is it sometimes comes in a container that is not easy to store. So you'll have the stuff that kind of seeps outside of the can. And so these are better, I've noticed. Sometimes it comes in a metal can with just the plastic lid and you've got stuff, and that's not my favorite, but these have been nice. I've also seen it in a squeeze bottle form. There's a brand that H-E-B carries, and that's kind of nice too. It keeps it a little cleaner and contained. And then, we talked about olives or onions and garlic. Those are also prebiotic foods. So this whole series was focused on healthy holiday, right? And some of the tips that I tried to incorporate were definitely much more plant-based fruits and vegetable kind of recipes. We started with that beautiful delicata squash with the apples and the spinach. That was a nice one because it had a whole combination of flavors. And then we moved on to those yummy chipotle sweet potatoes and the cranberry. Did anybody make those? Anybody try those? Yeah, that was a nice thing for Thanksgiving, Christmas. We had some for our holiday meal. And then we end with something as simple as this, making a simple little marinade with some different kind of spice. Often I don't know about you, but I'm kind of like a kid in a candy store when I go to the grocery store and I see the spice aisle, because I'm like, ooh, what haven't I tried and what could I do with that? And this, I think, was probably one of the spices that probably happened with. I was like, that looks kind of interesting. Or maybe I saw a cooking show and I was like, that sounds interesting. I wonder if I can find that and what that tastes like. But I always have some in my cabinet, and you can even get it now in bulk at some Central Market or some of the places that carry bulk spices. It's kind of becoming a more well-known spice because it's just so tasty. I would say it's not super spicy, but it kind of adds a little bit of, because it has all those warm spices in it, the cumin and the coriander and all of that, paprika. It kind of has those flavors to it. But so again, back to our healthy holiday recipes. So we have ingredients that are plant-based. They can be used all year round. Another thing I would recommend, if you all haven't thought about this, is, we like to enjoy our recipes during the holidays, right? Because it's a special time of the year. But think about adding things like spices to bring out the flavors of food and watching the sodium and the sugar of things. But when you just sort of boost the flavor with all these different methods, adding onions and garlic like this to anything will automatically change the flavor of what you're eating. Adding a simple sauce like this, trying something like this, or even just getting a little salad dressing, whether you make it or you buy it to put on something like this, will just jazz it up a little bit more and maybe make it a little more interesting to eat, right? And then paying attention to all the textures. This one I love because it does have, like, what's missing for me are the golden raisins, because I like the sweet and the chewy. But it's perfectly fine like this. It's a different way of enjoying a vegetable, because I think a lot of, especially when we're growing up, right, we're just like, eat your carrots, eat your broccoli, and it's just like that, or it's a mushy lump and you're like, I don't want to eat that ever again in my life. But if you do something like this, it just makes it a little more interesting, and just one bite full of that and you're like, wow, that's really interesting. I'm going to try that again, or maybe I'll try this on cauliflower. Or maybe I'll try it with, you could do this kind of with any vegetable. Carrots would be good with these spices on it. And just the way that you present it. Somebody said, it's the presentation of it. We really do eat with our eyes, and who's gonna pass on a platter that looks like this, right? So I hope that I've given you all some great ideas and tips that you'll take with you, not just for the holidays, but maybe throughout the year as you're cooking things, or maybe doing some special occasion events for your friends and family, preparing something that's definitely nutritious and healthy, but also delicious. So thank you, ladies, again for having me out. I really enjoyed our series of healthy holiday recipes, and hope to see you again in February. All right, thank you.
Thank you.